Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. And we are so excited to be talking about something that we have an expert for. So we are talking about digital marketing today. Now, Buyside has a marketing suite in it, but is that enough? Is there ways that we can use that in different methodologies that are out there where we can use these tools in different ways? So we have got an expert for you, and it's our very own Steve Peele, who's our Director of Platform Growth. And we're also going to go through a couple of those tools today with our Customer Success Specialist, Todd Williams. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Very good. Okay, so a quick agenda for what we're going to be looking at today is we're going to take a look at retargeting. So one, what is that? And a couple of different ways that we can use it. We're also going to talk about automated responses. So ways that you can stay in flow with people, ways that there are responses that somebody can get a message right away. And assorted other things. Now, again, I'm speaking from a place of I'm probably in your boat where I don't entirely know what these mean, but we're going to find out today. And we're also going to be talking about brand sale versus service sale. So when you're marketing, what type of marketing are you doing? Is it yourself? Is it your service? And we'll be able to explore how much of each we should be doing of those. And then we're going to go through some buy-side tools. Now, again, we do have everybody on mute. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box that you see over on the right-hand side. Now, before we jump into the first section, I do want to ask all of you a question, which is your preferred social media platform when promoting your business? So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. You should see it on your screen now. So if you could, just go ahead and click one of those and we'll get an idea of how people are marketing themselves, their businesses on which social platforms. So it looks like, wow, okay, so a lot on Facebook and a handful of others. Wow, okay, so 88%, 90%, oh, it's still going. This is fantastic. Thank you all for voting. Perfect. Okay, so the vast majority is on Facebook. Next is Instagram. Then we have LinkedIn and Twitter. So perfect. So a lot of different variation in that. So that's perfect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close that. And now we're going to get started. So Steve, can you just talk briefly about retargeting? So this is something that I feel like we've all seen, but it's a term we may not be familiar with. So first, what's retargeting?
Totally. So retargeting is a methodology or principle that allows you to maintain relevance and frequency in front of your target audiences by essentially following them around the web. So an example of this would be if you've ever been shopping on Amazon.com and you're checking out a cool pair of shoes and you don't pull the trigger on it right away, but you then go to Facebook and you see that exact pair of shoes in your ad stream there, that's retargeting. And basically what it allows you to do is really increase the frequency so that your target audience will be more likely to take action, whatever that action is, whether that's, listing with you, or for us, if it's, requesting a demo or, purchasing that pair of shoes. It increases the likelihood of the prospect or lead to actually convert.
I love it. That happens to me all the time. Like 3 days ago, I needed to buy a new pair of work boots, and every ad I've seen on every platform and website I've gone to since has been on work boots. So I've seen those a lot. So I guess the next question is that's a great idea, is being able to, if somebody's interested in real estate, especially in your area, how do I do that? What can I use to get that concept out there to start to market in that way?
Totally. So the answer is everything, but more directly, because it's a methodology and more of like a principle or strategy, you'll see that most of the big, social media platforms or big digital properties or big players in the space, they have the ability to roll out retargeting campaigns natively. And so the way that they do that is they drop what's called a pixel, right? And basically it's a little cookie that flags in the user's browser and then identifies that person anonymously as they navigate around the web, right? So there's a lot of reciprocity between like the Facebooks, the Googles, the LinkedIn's of the world, where generally speaking, the pixels are pretty similar. So it's really, you can use whatever platform as long as there is a pixel that allows you to actually cookie that user and follow them around. One thing that I will say outside of the native, the native placements, whether you're doing Facebook ads or what have you, is there are other like distribution networks that work with larger like media companies, right? So when you're advertising, if you see banner ads or something on time.com, you're not actually natively placing ads on time.com. You're actually using a distribution network and an ad network that is distributing your content and serving it to users that match within their audience, right? And so you can use not only native platforms, but also distribution networks to really reach your target audience. So
I love that. So it sounds like if somebody's new to this, if somebody's new to the digital marketing and they want to do some of that retargeting, especially if in real estate, if we're farming a specific area, what's a good place to start? Is it going to be Facebook? Because I know we have ads on there. Is it going to be a different service? What's going to be the beginner's guide? What's going to be the first thing that I should click on when I want to start retargeting?
so I would say Facebook is probably a safe bet, your safest bet, right? The reason I say that is they have a very, very rich like user profile with intent data. So intent meaning like somebody is likely to do X, as well as definitive like core metrics on each person, which I know sounds like creepy, but ideally, you're serving ads that are actually valuable to your prospective audience. So Facebook is definitely a safe bet. I would also say Facebook is a safe bet because just the nature of the work that we do in the real estate industry is a very personal and high touch, and it's a process that warrants kind of that white glove, but also like that friendly approach. Whereas like LinkedIn, I wouldn't click through an ad to list my home, on LinkedIn, right? It's impersonal, it's kind of stodgy. But for this space, I would say Facebook hands down is probably that, and Instagram, right? Just because the types of content that perform well on those two channels actually are directly in line with what we do in the real estate space. So
Gotcha. And there's something I like that you said, and there's some platforms where you're more likely to do click on one of those ads, especially if it is a retargeting ad. So why on some platforms does this work better? Or I guess just as a general question, why does this work as a strategy?
totally. So, and I need to stop saying totally, evidently. So so
I like it.
right. It's a West Coast thing, right? So the reason it works is frequency. That's the name of the game. The more familiar the end user is with your brand, your service, whatever you're really pitching them, the more likely they are to act. One of the challenges that I see digital marketers, I think, finally coming around to, especially in this space, having been in the real estate space for 12 plus years, is this idea of like when you advertise in the real estate space, it cannot be transactional at all. Like you do not go for the sale immediately. There's a process and there's a time period that exists prior to somebody deciding to list with you or deciding to buy with you, where they need to familiarize themselves not only with your brand and you, but also real estate conceptually, right? So there's education and nurture along that process that's really important, and retargeting allows you to do so programmatically. And that frequency, as you kind of chip away, if I've seen Tom's face every day for the past 90 days, and I know that he's a real estate agent. When I go to buy a home, I'm more than likely going to go with them because just for whatever reason, I've seen him everywhere. I know enough about him. I'm familiar with him. Yeah, so really, especially because a home is, a lot of people's largest assets that they ever invest in. Like it's really, really important that there's a long tail like education and frequency and familiarity ahead of actually transacting business with them. So yeah,
I
I
love that
ramble.
answer, especially because it has so much of that personality in it. And, when you're a real estate agent, it is something that you need somebody to trust, right? It is
Yep.
a way that you would have to get somebody to do this largest thing in their life. So
Mhm.
we've talked about what platforms can be used and what's the first step we should take. So what are a couple ways that we can get the most out of our marketing campaigns, especially if we're implementing it now?
Yeah, so the first one, and this is not a cop out, I promise, is start. Like literally
Start.
go on Facebook, or Google search quickly, Facebook tracking pixel, put it on your site like today, even if you're not going to use it right away, because it'll still collect data. And when you are ready, you don't want that to be a blocker to get started. So I would say like just start. You absolutely should, even if you're spending $1 a day or $5 a day or $500 a day. Place that pixel. You will thank me for it, I promise. The second piece is get very, very experimental and like scientific in how you deploy your campaigns. I've over the course of my career, I've adopted this methodology or this idea that like I'm quote unquote married to nothing. And what I mean by that is like everything that I do from obviously there are strategic principles that you operate against, but on a daily basis, I go into our campaigns and I say, okay, these are underperforming, 3 pieces of creative. Let's bump those out. This audience isn't performing well. Let's go ahead and kind of shift that a little bit. Let's incrementally iterate. Like be very, very methodical and scientific about how you manage these campaigns, because it's not set it and forget it. It's not, you put up the billboard once and it's like, hopefully enough eyeballs see it. It's no, you can tweak and iterate as you go. Don't be married to the first idea that pops in your head. Obviously execute on it. Don't get stuck analyzing, but also make sure that you're really managing it. Like it's not turn it on and then you're good. It's you need to manage it. You need to be methodical. You need to be scientific. And then the third piece would
Well,
be,
can I ask you a question
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
quick? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
You're
that
good.
I like that last point of don't being married to anything. Is there any repercussions to switching? So if you're using one, like Facebook, for example, is there any drawbacks to switching to a different service?
It depends, right? Like that's a tough question. Um, just because there are so many variables. I will clarify a little bit, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at, is like I wouldn't bounce back and forth from platform to platform, just because like the worst thing that you could do is turn on a campaign on Facebook and then a day later say, oh, it didn't work, and then bounce to something else. Like don't do that. Like be married to the core principle or like strategy of digital marketing or through retargeting, but don't be married to like the campaign level stuff, right? That's kind of what I mean. Does that answer the question that I don't think that you?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
of
cool.
course, yeah. See the campaigns through, but switching the service if you're looking to improve is not a terrible thing. That's I think perfect. So
Yep, totally. Totally. And the third thing would be, and this is related to experimentation and like incremental like iteration, but always make sure that you're running variants across the board, right? So it's not one piece of creative that you're distributing across everything, hoping to get different results with the same piece. Like be creative in the mix and the variety and the variance that you deploy. And what I mean by that is, you know, when I deploy campaigns, whether it's at Buyside or anywhere else, I typically, and I'm an engineering background, so I'm mega nerd. I typically deploy like 15 variants at a time, and variants could be different copy, different images. Instead of, you know, a target photo, I'm going to use a photo of people shaking hands, or you don't have to go that over the top, but definitely make sure that you do introduce variants, because what it allows you to do is learn and kind of validate a hypothesis or invalidate a hypothesis that you have. And the name of the game is just like rapidly learning what your audience is going to respond to. So yeah.
Perfect.
Those are
I
my
love
three.
that. And you know, one of the first thing you said I really like, which is just start. Like, get out there and try it, especially with any new tool. Just get out there and give it a shot. And you know, there is the old expression. I think it's the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. We'll modify that for marketing just a bit. The journey of 1,000 newsletters starts with a single email. So that's the first bit. And the second is what that last point that you made. Always make sure that you're running a variance. I think is great, because I know I've seen the same video on Facebook twice a day, every day, and it's one of those things where now I'm not annoyed with the product. I'm just annoyed that the ad is the exact same every single day. So I guess that dovetails nicely into our next question: is what is the frequency? How often should we be sending these out to get people's attention but not annoy them with our content?
Yeah, so another one of those loaded questions, but frequency, it depends on what you're trying to do. So like if you think about your buyer seller journey, right? There's different stages of the funnel, right? Top of funnel is like largely like awareness education. Mid funnel is what is it? You know, educating them to actually perform an action, and bottom of the funnel is like, let's actually get them engaged with you as a real estate professional. So the reason I bring this up is there's like you need to be doing this throughout. Like frequency, like you should be running ads always, but you should think of those stages, or those stages in the funnel as those gates, right? So like on the top end, it's, you know, maybe for the first month in retargeting, a particular target audience, you know, it's just educational content, and then after that 30 days, and they get bumped down to a more stronger sales call to action, and then they get bumped down to, you know, a hard sell, right? So frequency, I'd say always run campaigns. Obviously, like the more that they see your face, the better. I don't think, as long as you're reaching the right people and targeting correctly, you should be providing value to them regardless, right? But think of it as like different stages. So think of, okay, the first part is they need to be familiarized, or they need to familiarize themselves with real estate as a whole. So here's, you know, 3 pieces of content that I can promote for that stage, and then kind of look at it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. That's perfect, especially the stages part, because we know that, especially in real estate, everything happens in stages, whether it's the introduction,
Right.
staying in flow, an actual being in process. I mean, walking through the sales flow of a real estate, there's generally 4 or 5 steps in there. So this was perfect in the sense that you can follow up to each one of those phases. Okay, so I
Yep.
do have a question for everybody out there, and that is, we're going to be talking about automated follow-ups next. So I just want to know what's your familiarity with these. So we're going to launch another poll. If you could just let me know, how often are you using the automated follow-ups? Now, we're obviously going to be talking about what these are and how we can use them a little bit better in our business here in the next few minutes. But I do want to just get, what is your familiarity? Ooh, there's a big word, with each of these things. Okay, so it looks like most people have heard about them, but they don't use them a ton. So Steve, can you walk us through just a general sense of what is the automated follow-up sequence?
Totally. So I promise after today I will not say totally ever again. Um, so so automated follow-up sequences are critically important to what I call, and I'm using air quotes, owned contacts. What this means is somebody has given you some piece of information that allows you to follow up and actually essentially own the relationship. You don't need to spend more ad dollars to get in front of them necessarily. You don't need to go show up to their door and remind them that you're their friendly realtor. This is something that you own and you have now. You have their email address, right? So this is as free as it gets at this point, and it needs to be leveraged. I think a lot of people tend to forget how valuable their drip or nurture lists are, and focused a little too much on the top of funnel like acquisition instead of like the actual the thoughtfulness and intention behind like walking that individual down a user journey that educates them.
Ooh, okay. Sorry about that, folks. It looks like we got a little hiccup there from Steve's audio. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't me. But we'll continue with this in just a moment. We'll give Steve a shot to rework his audio, and then we'll jump back on. So what we're talking about is the automated follow-up sequences. And so the next couple of questions are going to be about how often we should be sending this out, and the types of content that we want to use to follow up. So we're going to get that started. But if we can't get Steve back on, we do have a couple of Buyside tools that we are going to be going over. So just give us one moment, and then we'll jump back into one of those two things. Skipping. Okay, so Todd, we've got a couple of tools that we're going to go over today. Some marketing tools, especially when we're talking about social media and a few other things. Can you walk us through what those are? I think we're going to go through just briefly what some of those are inside of the marketing suite, but also when we're doing a social media ad, we can change the image, right?
Sure. As far as running the ads themselves, let's see here. I'm just trying to. Okay, as far as running the ads themselves, I can't really speak to that. That's kind of what Steve was here for, but I can walk you through how and what the social media sharing capabilities are for Buyside. So there's two areas I want to look at. One is obviously our home valuation site. That's kind of our what we've been talking about this whole time is generating those seller leads. Sorry, did you say something, Tom?
No, you got. Sorry, keep going. Oh, there he is.
Steve's back.
I am back. Sorry about that, guys.
Sure. I guess I could, Tom, if I'll finish showing off.
Yeah.
You know, how to do this here, and then we'll jump back to Steve. All right.
Sounds like a plan.
Sure. So like we talked about, your marketing suite here is where your home valuation site lives. This is your seller lead generation tool, and we make it pretty easy for you to share this directly to social media from your Buyside account, and that's simply just clicking that center box, social media box in the middle. We can hover over, click on Facebook. That'll open us up right there to share it directly to social media. So now this is something where I want to touch on what Steve was talking about in terms of trying different things. We have this article from our help center right here beneath the social share channels. When Steve was talking about changing, your ads, this is a great way to do that. And these are calls to actions for social media. We even have a list here towards the bottom where I think it's about 20 to 25 different types of calls to actions. We could drop this in the chat box, and I will do that in a moment. And I could drop the PDF as well, so you can print it out and have it next to you. As far as pixeling, Facebook pixeling, it would probably be, it might be something you're already doing with your own website. So if you wanted to market, or if you wanted to have our widget with the home valuation, what's your home worth widget on your home site, so you could see where those leads are coming from, here's some pretty good instructions here on how to do so. We definitely recommend working with your internet provider, or I'm sorry, your website provider, to making sure that widget code gets copied in there correctly. Another area that we don't talk about as much is your buyers. If you're working with a buyer, I know the market's a little crazy right now, but we make it pretty easy for you to share the buyer on social media as well. So same process, boom, you click on Facebook, it'll open up that Facebook page, posting page, and this we'll click on the public profile. This is what people see when they click on it. So Buyside, when you see matching listings in your Buyside account, those are listings from inside your brokerage only. So this will give you an opportunity to advertise that buyer outside of your brokerage. That was more or less what I had for now. I'll throw it back to you, Tom.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. That was a very nice presentation of some of those social tools that you have for Buyside, where we can share those on these social media platforms that we're talking about. Okay, so jumping back and just to talk about automated follow-up sequences, Steve, we were talking about, we have a couple questions on how to process these. So how often are we going to send them out? What is the cadence that we want to send these out? What types of content should go out? Now, I know we talked about how there are different phases, but is there something specific that we can talk about? And what channels and generic versus personalized content should we be sending out? Now, I know that was a lot of questions all at once, but they're all in one slide. So I'll leave it to you.
Cool, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Cool. Yeah, I'm having all sorts of issues over here. All good though. Cool. So let's first start with Cadence. So Cadence is probably the second most important thing, because you do not want to be the person that's emailing somebody every single day. You do not want to be the person that like causes people to wince when they see your name. That's no fun for anybody. So Cadence is critical. Typically what I encourage for, that top of funnel, like educational style of messaging, I encourage that you do a cadence of like once every 10 to 14 days, and then accelerate as people get closer to that actual home buying or selling decision. What I mean by that is, if every signal says that they are likely to list soon, you definitely want to increase the cadence and frequency, so that there's no other choice but you, right? But a good rule of thumb to start with is every 10 to 14 days for a drip campaign. The types of content I kind of alluded to, obviously top of funnel is more educational, more around like brand, more around the industry at large. So things like market reports, right? Things like, here are the steps that are required for buying or selling a home. As they move downstream or later stage in that funnel, you would pepper in things more about you. What are your specialties, right? Do you primarily focus on reloads and that's your bread and butter? Then start peppering in some of that information or some of that messaging. And then when they're ready to, when you think that they are ready to list or purchase with you, that's when you do really the hard sell style content, right? Like, hey, let's get on the phone. Hey, let's grab coffee. Would love to talk about the neighborhoods that you're interested in. Hey, let's, all of those sort of things. Some of those like assumptive like closes, right? The channels, really email, right? Email and text are like the world that we live in now. And I personally don't believe email is going anywhere anytime soon, but some do. And a lot of people are seeing a lot of success with text. The point is, it's less about the channel really. It's more about like the intention and I guess it's really the intention behind what you're sending, when, and to who, right? And then that's what kind of segues into generic versus personalized. I think top of funnel stuff, you can keep generic. That's broader market information, broader, real estate, home buying or selling process information. Some of the things that are like, I know you have a pulse, but I don't know like where you are or what you're interested in. It's, it's content that anybody could digest and get some value out of. As you move, later into that process though, that's when you want to start delivering personalized or more personalized content. And what I mean by that is don't handwrite an email for every person in your database. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can introduce some basic principles. So one principle could be, if you're using like MailChimp or something like that, you can start using tags to say, okay, these 100 contacts are interested in urban areas, so I'm going to tag them with urban, and now that's a separate segment that I can personalize a message, quote unquote personalized. It's still to a broad audience, but it's relevant and focused towards them. You could do things like field merges, right? Like, so you can pull in their first name into the body or the message. And the point is just to tailor the content a little bit more as they go downstream, so that the message that they're receiving is highly relevant.
I like that. And, especially with that generic versus personalized portion, I think you hit on a good point, which is, you don't want to send a personalized email to everybody in your database. Let's say you've got 5,000 people in a database. You don't want to be writing out all of those emails, especially if we're trying to stay in contact with everybody once a month, or even if it's once a quarter. There's still a lot of people that we might have in that database. Even if it's a few hundred people, that's a lot of hours that we're going to be working on that. So it sounds like, and maybe you can just confirm this for me, it sounds like when we're working on that first phase, the first stage in the selling pipeline, that is, when we're trying to get people to work with us and just commit and say, yes, I'm ready to buy or sell, it sounds like we can use an email that has some generic content in it. So something like some market trends, or maybe a little paragraph about myself. So it's personalized in the sense that it's about me. It's something that I'm trying to give my personality to, but it's not necessarily personalized to a person. So it's not to the Smiths. It's just about my business. So once we get into the later stages, into the sales flow, like for example, when we're staging the home or getting ready to close, that's when the content can become a little bit more personalized. So I guess my question is what percentage do you think we should work on sending out this marketing as generic versus personalized? Uh-oh. Did we lose you again? Are you on mute?
Sorry. I was muted. I said, oh, that's a good question.
Okay.
Again, I'll go back to, like, it depends on where people are in your funnel, but I would say a healthy mix, like 50-50 is good, because it allows you to do two things. And so I'll kind of share a strategy that we use here at Buyside, in some of our like prospecting and stuff. When we sell to brokers, we have more generic content positioned as if it's coming from Buyside, the brand, right? So, the from is Buyside and, what have you. And the content is more generic, right? But then on top of that, we also have some personalized, and they look like personal emails, but automated sequences that look like they come from myself, right? And so we keep a healthy mix because it's effectively two separate at-bats, and each has its own, purpose, right? There's the more like broader corporate communications or more like announcement style stuff, and then the more targeted and focused personalized messaging, right? So I'd say 50-50 or just like balanced across all is a healthy mix, to be completely candid. And I know that sounds like a non-answer, but it is the truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's important to say, is that they're both important. It is something that, is going to help your business to be able to do one of these. So if we're looking at this and thinking, well, I want to pick one, that really the answer is there's different times for each of those, much in the same way that there's different types of ways that you talk to your clients, whether it be in the marketing section or we're closing, you're going to talk to your client a different way. So that does actually dovetail nicely into our last section, which is brand sale versus service sale. So when we're talking about brand sale, it's that brand recognition. So it's something that somebody might hear, or we're trying to get brand recognition, where they're thinking about, who is that person and all that, and then versus what that they can actually do for me. So what is the service that they're going to be providing? So again, I do have one last poll for you that we can use. So before we jump into this, I'm going to go ahead and launch. And the question is what do you market more, yourself or your brokerage? So when you're trying to get new business, which of these are you going to be using more often? If we can actually, if you just want to click on that, okay, it looks like most people are marketing themselves. So, okay, we'll leave it up for just a few more seconds, but it looks like everybody clicked on myself, which is great. So, Steve, can you tell us, do we want to market our brand or ourselves?
This is good. The wise words of Jay-Z, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. That's kind of like how I would think about it, right? Like you yourself are, you being the service that you provide and the expertise that you provide, like you're a business, right? But also like you're a business person that operates underneath the brand as well, right? So I think both are critically important, right? Because as we talked about, on the front end of this conversation, was, not only do they need to trust you, they need to trust the brand that you affiliate with. They need to trust the process in and of itself. They need to trust the information that you give them. So it's really important to keep that balance between, if you're, I'm not going to say any particular brands, but if you're with brand A, right, you need to equally promote brand A's position in the market alongside your position within that brand, right? So there's two pieces. You do both, and both are meant to offer a degree of like trust, right? And not only you personally, but also the process. This is, and you all know this, obviously, better than I do, probably, that it's a very emotional process. Buying or selling your home. It is. I mean, by and large, the largest decision that 95% of us make in our lifetime. It is highly emotional, and outside of trusting you, I don't need to necessarily know you from Adam, but I also then need to trust the process. Like, are there going to be breakdowns and negotiating back and forth? And that's something that's outside of your direct control, right? So it's important to balance both of those. Sell both because both have kind of calming and soothing effects, right? Especially as you build rapport with especially new prospects. Obviously, with referrals and all of that, that's a different arena that you operate in. But still, it's important to balance both pretty effectively.
I love it. Perfect. So this may be a bit of repeating yourself, but I do want to get specifics on both of these. So can you talk a little bit about brand recognition? So why would I want to market my brand when I know what I'm going to be doing is a specific thing, right? I'm going to be working with a person. So why would I market my brand specifically?
So the best way that I could answer this is the reason why is the same reason why you chose the brokerage you chose, right? There are differences in their style or what they stood for or their principles or their rates, or there's something about the brokerage that you've aligned with that made you choose that. Tell that story, right? Because those are the things that help your brand stand out from the rest, right? Brand A may be about, I don't even know. I'm not even going to make comparisons, but those are the things that people care about. Like those are the affinity things that, like, in your heart of hearts. There's a brokerage. I forget exactly. They're in Colorado somewhere. Really good friends of mine that they kick back a pretty substantial percentage of all of their commissions to underserved communities, right? On principle, right? And that to me is something that like pulls at my heartstrings. And I'm like, they're a smaller shop. They're, maybe 8 people. I don't know them. Well, I know them now, but didn't at the time. But that was something that like just tugged at my heart. And I'm like, well, you know what? I can do some like social good while also engaging with these people, right? So like, what is that brand story? Like that's what you want to convey, because that's ultimately what you lean on, right? And then I'm assuming service is next, right? Does that answer that question, by the way?
That does, yes. And that was going to be my next question is, yes, with the brand recognition, that is great because that does put people's minds at ease. I know if I'm going to be spending, even a little bit of money with the company, I want to make sure it's not going to be a company that's going to fall down on the job. So that is a perfect. But the next question is, why would I market my service? Now, this seems like it'd be an easy answer, but I do want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, and I have a very weird like perspective on the industry, and I know that it's not broadly shared, but it starts with like service. The way that you operate is ultimately what differentiates you, right? Like, and here's what I mean. There are agents that I've worked with that understand that throughout the day, like they understand my busy work life, so they know that text and high frequency, quick communications are critical. They promoted that as their style. They're like, you know what, I'm not gonna bother you and like show up to your work and sign stuff on the back of my car and all that stuff. It's like, no, you know what, I'm just gonna send you quick notes. Here's how I operate. Awesome. Additionally, on the service element is like, what are the things that you're going to do for them that are going to make this process easier, right? So like, are you using transaction management software so that, when they're shuttling kids to school, they don't need to turn around to like go print something out, right? They can just use an app. Like those are sort of the service elements that you can provide that make a difference on the front end. Obviously, they have insane value during the process, but on the front end, to know that like, Rob Realtor down the street from me, I never need to really like meet him, outside of like the first few times, and we can, get into contract. Like that to me is something that's attractive, just because of my work life. I wouldn't understand that or what Rob offered had he not marketed that, right? So those are the kind of things that I think of in level of importance in marketing your service itself. Because at the end of the day, it's like there's only so many ways that you can negotiate a contract, right? But it's the elements that surround it that are ultimately your differentiating factors, right? So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this was a great webinar on digital marketing and how to get yourself out there, how to start to lean into your digital marketing platforms. We went over a couple of tools that Buyside has, but this was a lot of understanding why you would want to use that digital marketing strategy, especially in today's market. So we had our expert Steve on. Now we do have a couple resources that I just want to make sure you know that we have, and that is our Buyside Insiders Facebook group. And this is something where you're going to be able to see some of our social media strategy, where you can come in and see some best practices, tips and tricks, testimonials, and a couple of other things. So you can always see that. And if ever you run into an issue, you can always email us at support@getbuyside.com. Now, these webinars are on our Help Center and on our YouTube page. So if you wanted to go and check out Get Buyside Training or just Buyside Training on YouTube, you can find this video if you wanted to listen to it back. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.